power of Mercury was associated with the faithful transmission of knowledge. And the ancients placed this symbol under the control or direction of Sirius, the dog star, the star of the faithful one. And it still occurs in some of our religious rituals and so forth. And in the Quran, one of the animals that was permitted to enter heaven was the faithful dog that went into the cave with the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. Now, the 7 sleepers of Ephesus is another interesting legend relating to the 7 and this recurrent number. In this case, the 7 sleepers, the 7 powers of the soul, and the faithful dog, the body, all went to sleep together. In the study of Mercury, we also go into our Hermetic analogy, and we come upon the sovereign symbol of Mercury, which was the original Egyptian deity Thoth, T-H-O-T-H. Thoth is actually the root of our word thought, and has to do with the principle of mind. Thoth was regarded as the author of the great body of sacred writings, more than 40,000 volumes. We are not to assume, of course, that these were the writings of one person, but the writings of one mind distributed among all living beings. Universal mind writes all things. The Thoth, or Toat, of the Egyptians later became the Thoth Hermes of the Osirian cycle, and this in turn the Hermes Trismegistus of the later Hermetic teachings which arose in Alexandria about the beginning of the Christian era. Thoth's symbol is a stylus and a writing tablet. He is the symbol of the faithful recorder of things. He is the one that receives the messages of the gods and faithfully preserves them for all time. He is therefore the symbol of the messenger. He arises as Merodach in another group of religions, Babylonian. He is also preserved to us under the form of Nebo, the deity from which the great kings of Assyria and Babylon, such as Nebo-Belshazzar, derived their name. They based their names upon this deity Nebo. It is also interesting that when Moses died, he died on Mount Nebo, and Nebo was the Mercury of these people, also represented with the stylus and the writing tablet, and in the Babylonian cuneiform described as the Lord of the writing table. The Lord of the writing table. And Moses died upon Nebo. And Moses himself is remembered particularly because of the 2 tables of the law. These analogies get dim in interpretation, but the roots of them are very important. In India, the planet Mercury is called Buddha. And this is another very interesting situation. Mercury is also associated with the day Wednesday in the Nordic mystery, associated with Odin or Wotan. And Wotan again occurs among the K'iches' of Central America as their ancient navigating deity. Mercury or Buddha is represented in one of the Indian Buddhistic paintings as seated in the midst of the planets, acting as their messenger or servant. Buddha's power as Mercury therefore ties with the possibility of the philosophy of mind. And we know that Buddha, from the beginning of his ministry to the end, preached the danger of the wrong use of mental energy. Mercury in modern astrology is said to show the relationship between the mental energy of the individual and his ability to express himself through the sensory perceptions. Mercury, therefore, rules the 5 senses, which Buddha calls the 5 hindrances. Buddha was locked to the struggle to the death, practically, with the problem of those parts of man's constitution which are under the control of Mercury. Thus, the religious symbolism and the philosophical symbolism tie together. The 7 days of the week, of course, are another interesting example of the septenary. And in the septenary, we have another curious point. If you go around the world following the sacred days, you will find that for one of the religions of the world, every one of the days is sacred. This is a good point, because it might remind us of the fact that all 7 days are equally sacred in the first place, and that it is only our own limited virtue which forces us to restrain our good deeds, particularly to one day, because we haven't enough of them to go around. It's like, Mother's Day or something. Only Dave can really work up a lot of enthusiasm on the subject. The whole thought is wrong. Now, for instance, in the Muslim faith, Friday is the sacred day. In the Jewish faith, Saturday. And in some of the early Christian faith, Saturday. Now, if we want to go back into the fight, we have to realize that we still have, in the Christian world, a tremendous struggle going on as to whether Saturday or Sunday is the correct day of worship. The other 5 days we're sure of, and here we have 5 out of 7 again. And 2 that we can't be quite certain as to what they should represent. But Venus is the ruler of Islam. And the crescent of Islam is not the crescent of the moon, it is the crescent of Venus. And as far back as 2,500 years ago, the observers in the valley of the Euphrates had discovered that Venus is never visible to us as a circle. It is only visible as a small moon, never full, but attaining maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of its fullness, but never complete, and usually visible only as a crescent. So the crescent of Islam is the crescent of Venus, as is indicated by the 5th day of worship, and also by the color green, which is the sacred color of Islam, which is precisely the color which was assigned by the ancients to Venus. So each religion, seemingly, breaks down upon this pattern. Here we have Friday, the religion of Venus; Saturday, Friday, the religion of Islam; Saturday, the religion of Israel; Sunday, the religion of Christianity. And if we study carefully and go back to the records, which is quite an imposing task, but it can be done, I have gone through it, we find every one of these days was essentially related to one of the great planetary mysteries. Now, you have seen perhaps, or at least have read in the paper, the story of the 7 wonders of the world. I'm sure if you saw the picture, you are as completely uninformed on them as you were before. It was a nice idea, but it did not quite gel. Too much economy in the wrong places. But anyway, we do know there were 7 wonders. And we do know that these 7 wonders, whether anyone recognized it or not, were the 7 wonders of the 7 planets. Now let's just see how that worked out. We'll consider the wonders of the world. Remember now the key words of the 7 planets in astrology. Saturn, the ancient symbol of death. Among the wonders of the world, the mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the great tomb, built in memory of the dead. The next one, Jupiter in the planets. The Olympian Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the world. The next one, Mars, fire. The Pharos of Alexandria, the great lighthouse. The 4th one, the sun, Helios, the Colossus of Rhodes, the great figure of the sun god that stood over the gates of the city, or of the harbor of Rhodes. Venus, the hanging gardens of Semiramis, queen of Babylon. Mercury, the great pyramid of Giza, sacred to Thoth Hermes, the master of the mysteries. And the moon, the temple of Diana of Ephesus. These were the 7 wonders of the world, Diana, a moon goddess. So every one of the 7 wonders, built by different peoples at different times, were by some strange circumstance dedicated to a different deity, never overlapping, and these 7 correspond exactly with the planets. And there can be no question that somewhere underneath that there was an intent or design of some kind. Again, your septenary, and of those great remains, those great monuments of antiquity, only one remains, the great pyramid of Giza. The others have vanished in the waste of time, and we know their places by legend only. We believe that part of the old ruins of the hanging gardens of Babylonia may exist, but we are not certain. So here again we have what were called the pentacles, or the magical devices of the great creative septenary. And it would seem to me that developing of this idea might have been very interesting in connection with this motion picture that I mentioned, because it would show an ancient knowledge of astronomy and would also have revealed the mysterious fact that these various nations and peoples of different beliefs and of no great friendliness among themselves had all united to adore the 7 powers of the soul. And each had chosen a different one. And each had chosen the one that was related to his own religion. showing that at that time there were 7 of these groups, each worshipping one of the 7 planets, powerful enough to undertake and complete the enterprise referred to under the story of the wonder, which one of the 7 wonders it may be. So here's another case where these planetary symbols have moved in on us. And we can keep on going, and we can find them in Polynesia. We find them among the Eskimos. We find them everywhere. And out of these symbols, we come by degrees, as in the case of Mercury, to the realization that we are dealing with basic or symbolic principles, that there is a relation between the sensory perceptions of man, the races of man, the continental diffusion of human culture, the species and the types, genera of living things, all of which are capable of septenary division, the different philosophies and schools of ethics, morality, all of these great structures fit together to form one basic concept. Now, in your ancient Greek music, you had the same problem. You had 7 musical modes. You had the 7 strings upon the Orphic lyre. You had the 7 basic forms of Chinese music. And you have the septenary restated in the ragas of India, particularly in playing upon the great instrument, the veena, which is the sacred instrument of the goddess of music, of wisdom, and of harmony, the deity Sarasvati. Always the same number. The Chinese named the strings of their musical instrument after the planets. If, therefore, this number continues and falls along, as we have suggested, we cannot question that the ancients held these points to be valid, that this analogy was real and purposeful to them, returning to the 7 styles of architecture, the 7 liberal arts and sciences, the 7 sacraments, the cardinal virtues and the deadly sins, the seals of revelation, the trumpets that sounded, the lamps upon the altar, and all these mysteries, always identical in principle. Now let us take another one of our groups of symbols and see what we can do with the deity Osiris. Osiris, we are told, rules the underworld. You all know, we've written about it and talked about it many times, the legend of Isis and Osiris, as it is contained in the account by Plutarch, one of the best and one of the earliest authorities that we have. We know that after his cruel martyrdom, Osiris descended into the underworld to become the lord of the quick and the dead. We know that his throne was set up in Amentet, the subterranean world, and here, with the attendance of his sister wife Isis and her sister Nephthys, he became the judge in the great weighing of the soul. Plutarch tells us that Osiris is the subterranean sun, that he is therefore the light that shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. This light which shines in the darkness is the night sun of Apuleius, who saw it blazing beneath his feet when he entered the sanctuary of Proserpine. Paracelsus tells us that there are 3 suns in the solar system, that every solar system has actually 3 sun structures or solar structures in it, as represented by the trimuta of the Hindu. That there is the spiritual sun, which is in the true center. That there is the psychic sun, which is in the northern focal point of the ellipse. And there is the material sun, which is in the southern focal point. And the mental or psychical and the physical sun, called by the Persians and Hindus Asura and Asura, the true light and the false light, Ormuzd and Ahriman, the good angel and the fallen angel. These are the 2 suns which fight for control over the human soul. They must ultimately be reconciled in the true radiance of the spiritual sun, Ahura Mazda. So we have the 3 sun mystery. And the terrestrial or subterranean sun is the physical sun that we see in the sky. because it is that phase of the solar mystery which is concerned with manifestation of material life. Thus, this is the infernal sun, or the lower dark sun, that we see and which we regard as supernally brilliant. But this is the sun which feeds only body. But concealed behind it is the psychic sun which feeds souls, and ultimately the spiritual sun which feeds all things. This story is again contained for us in the transfiguration of Jesus, and the statement, of course, is preserved in the Bible, where it is said, "My tabernacle is in the sun." This mystery of the sun and the solar rite comes down to us in the Osiris cycle. For Osiris is the light of the underworld, and in man this light of the underworld corresponds to the solar energy within himself, with his heart, and with the life principle, as it is physically disseminated through his constitution. Now, in man himself there are 7 organs, 7 vital organs, which the ancients associated with the 7 planets. The heart, which is the center and the archetype of the body, is called in Buddhism the Septapanar cavern, or the cave of the 7 rooms or parts. For the ancients recognized 7 structures consisting of auricles and ventricles and related parts. And of course the auricle in the heart is also the oracle of Delphi, for it was from the heart that the great oracular manifestations were revealed. As the man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The heart is therefore the oracle, placed in the center of man's earth, which is, of course, the omphalic stone at Delphi. In this mystery also, the Hindus tell us that there are 7 parts of the brain, and Albertus Magnus gives us also the septenary division, that the 7 planets are posited again in the brain as their polar positive extremity, and that also, as the earliest researchers indicated, there are 7 sections of the human eye, and that every part of the body is septenary. We know that there are 7 important ductless glands, forming the endocrine chain, which still represents the most mysterious structure of the body. And I was talking to a doctor not more than 3 months ago, and he said, yes, we still think in terms of the 7 ductless glands, although we have a tendency to gloss over it, for the reason that we understand 5 and know nothing of the other 2. We have the same problem again coming up. The pituitary and pineal, while we may not say we know nothing about them, we do know something. But we do not know enough about them. We know a considerable amount now about the pituitary, but the Sabbath gland, the 7th, the gland of the arch of the entire system, the keystone, is still an almost impenetrable mystery. This 7th, by the way, is the eye, the mysterious, internal or all-seeing eye of the mysteries, which is again the symbol of Osiris, as born upon the throne crown of of Isis. So these problems come back in great mystery to us. But Osiris, as the subterranean sun, his body filled with eyes and plumed with the crowns of the north and south, or the extremities of existence, is part of a great solar cycle mystery. And his relationship to Typhon and the destroyer is not difficult for us to restore if we think a little. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent deity of the Mayas, is another Mercury god, or another Hermes. And under the heading of Hermes, we have practically all the messengers of the gods. Now let's give a little thought to our old friend Jupiter. Jupiter, or Zeus. One of our problems today is that we are almost totally ignorant of the most interesting mythology that we come in contact with, and that is the Greek. With the exception of those mystifying and hopelessly inadequate fables so lovingly preserved for us by Bullfinch, we have almost no knowledge of Greek theology. We have some fables and legends of Jupiter riding around in space in his chariot, or changing himself into a bull and carrying away Europa. These things are comparatively meaningless as we are now given them. But that they are meaningful must have been true. Otherwise they could not have held the admiration and respect of a people.